This is G11 at KCIS. We're doing writing and grammar for this class. And I'm just going to be doing explanations for a few of the questions from the old SAT, which are quite nice in terms of teaching actual grammar concepts. They're much better questions than the questions from the new SAT because they're specifically focusing in on the grammar concepts. This week, I believe we've been covering verb tenses. So using these 3 or 4 questions, I'll cover a few of the verb tense concepts. Everyone listening?
Yes.
All right, good. So let's take a look at this first one. We'll start out with a fairly easy question. Experts predict right now, right? Experts predict that in the near future, unsolicited commercial email messages. Before we even get to the grammar part of this, let me ask some of you, what does solicited or unsolicited mean? Does anyone know? Solicitate as a verb.
I know the meaning of the solicitude.
So, are you talking about solitude?
Yes.
Solitude is something different. Solitude means what? When you're alone, right? This feeling of aloneness. But solicitude, I'm not sure there's a word called solicitude.
There's a word of solicitude.
If there is, I'm not familiar with it. What does it mean though, if there is?
배려.
배려한다? What does 배려 mean?
Noun, 배려.
What is 배려?
Yielding.
Yielding? Okay? So, I'm not sure if that comes from the same root, okay? But, in the US, you'll see
Solicitude. I mentioned solicitude, not solicitate.
I know. These are words I'm talking about, though, from the US that's related to this word here, right? In the US, if you go to the US, you'll see a lot of houses there. Not apartments, right? Not office tels, but actual houses. If you walk by Cheongbalsan Park right here, right, you'll see a lot of these nice houses there. And Americans, right, tend to be focused on what? Their privacy and individuality, right? So a lot of the houses there have these big red signs that say, no solicitors, okay? And solicitors are people who come to your house and show up and they want something. They're asking you for something. So it might be religious people who come by and knock on your door and say, do you go to church? Would you like to go to church with us? Right? That is a solicitor. But there are also people who come by, right? There are Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts in the US, right? Little cute kids in elementary school. And they'll be like, Mister, would you like to buy some cookies? Those are solicitors too. Solicitors are people who come by and they want something from you. They're asking you for something, right? So if we take a look at this word, unsolicited, right? Unsolicited. Solicited means something that's welcomed or asked for, right? 부탁을 하거나 원하는 거를 solicited, right? But unsolicited, right? Commercial. Commercial means for business, right? And email messages. So these are unwanted messages. They're messages you did not ask for, right? Now, experts predict that in the near future, our clue word here, our key word should be in the near future. So now we're talking about which tense. We're predicting right now in the present, but this verb here, right, is going to go with this future. So accounts is present tense. Account is present tense, but the two are what? Singular, right? And plural, 단수복수, right? And we have will account, future. We have will be accounted, future. Okay? Would have could be accounted, right? Is past actually. Okay? Remember, could is past tense of can, right? So we can get rid of E, we can get rid of B, we can get rid of A immediately. A, B, and E are all, right, tense problems, all right? Now we're left with C and D. What's the difference between will account and will be accounted? Does anyone know?
Passive voice and active voice.
Passive voice and active voice, and thereby the meaning is different, right? When we say something will be accounted for, will account for, we're saying that if in choice C, messages will account for means messages will make up more than 90%, right? Will be accounted does not mean that. It means something else entirely, right? We're trying to say that email messages will consist of more than 90%, right? So it can't be passive because logically, right, this is not the meaning we're going for here. Got it? Good?
Yeah.
So the answer is most definitely C. So one important thing as we're studying SAT, whether it's reading or whether it's writing, ACT, whether it's reading or writing, remember, it's not good enough if you just choose things by, oh, this sounds right. That's what a lot of Americans do, and Americans do worse, right, in English grammar than Koreans do. Why do Koreans do better? Because they know the rules, right? We need to be able to look at each of these answer choices that are wrong and be able to demonstrate and explain clearly, not by feeling, not by what sounds right, right? But actual rules. Got it?
Teacher,
Yes.
what does account for mean?
Account for means it will make up that much, right? It'll be responsible for that much, right? It'll explain that much, okay?
Okay.
All right. Let's take a look at the next question. All right. Now, this is an easy question, but something that I imagine was hard for who had to do this one as a group? This one here, since scientific. Now, I bet you D and E, you're trying to come up with reasons or explanations why D and E are difficult, and you're like, it just sounds wrong. 좀 뭔가 아닌 것 같아, right? You probably had a hard time, all right? Now, I understand, because when I started teaching grammar as well too, right? I was like, there's something wrong about it, right? The next step from there for all of you, but especially for those two of you who are working on this one, is identifying which part exactly. But before we get to D and E, let's talk about A, B, and C, right? Since scientific advances are central to progress, what should we always do, right, in these sentences? We should always find the verb first, right? So I see they are central, verb. What's the subject? Scientific advances, right? Advances are central. But what I notice immediately is that we have since here. Since is a subordinating word, so it's a dependent clause. DC. DC, comma. Basic research deserving continuing support. Now this underlined portion I know can change, but what do I know for sure? Up until that underlined section, we have a DC. What do we need after that? Can we have a sentence just with a DC? No, what do we need? We need independent clause, complete sentence, right? What makes it not a complete sentence at this part? It's because we're lacking an independent clause of some sort, right? And if we know that, basic research deserving continuing support, for A, do we have a verb anywhere there? No, there's no verb, right? So this is fragment, because it's an incomplete sentence, but if you want to take it a step further, you identify what's missing there. No verb. Because sometimes there are fragments for other reasons as well too, right? Now B, basic research being what deserves continuing support. We do have a verb here with deserves, right? But it's going along with this modifier, being what deserves. We still don't have a main verb there, do we? Right? So same problem here. Fragment, no verb. We can get rid of A and B. Basic research deserves. Now we have a verb and we have a subject. Basic research deserves continuing support. Can that be a sentence on its own? 문장이 돼? 그것만 가지고?
Yes.
문장이 돼. Right? It can be a sentence on its own. So C looks okay, so we put a question mark because we want to make sure the other choices are also wrong or worse choices, right? And D, continuing support is deserved by basic research. We've got a subject, continuing support, is deserved. We've got a verb, and it's an independent clause. Is there anything wrong with that? Grammatically, is there anything wrong with it? Is there an error? No. We have a complete sentence here too. We put a question mark. E, continuing support is what they deserve in basic research. Again, we've got a complete sentence, but I want you to take a look at the difference between D and E first of all. We have they here, pronoun, right? Third person pronoun, 3인칭 대명사. If that's the case, what do we need to do? We need to make sure that there is an antecedent, right? A noun that it represents, right? And what is they referring to? Scientific advances, okay. So let's say that scientific advances. So we have an antecedent. We don't have a pronoun problem now, right? Because it makes sense. But what's wrong, quote unquote, about these things, right? Hayeon, right? Yunju, what were the explanations that you had? It's okay. I'm not trying to be like, oh, please, that's a terrible explanation. I'm curious because guess what? I'm sure all the other people in this class are probably like a little bit like uncertain as well too, right? Why is, first of all, you probably chose C, okay? Now, what's wrong with D or E? Or better yet, what's better about answer choice C? They're gonna hear your laughter and they're gonna be like, Would anyone else like to volunteer? It's okay, open it up to the classroom.
It seems like much straightforward.
Now, that's the same answer as, well, C just seems like it's better.
Teacher,
But I want you to identify. Yes, Sangyeon.
is it dangling modifier problem?
Is it a dangling modifier problem?
Nope.
굳이 패시브를 쓸 이유가 없어요.
Okay? Two things. First, Sangyeon asked a good question. He said, is it a dangling modifier problem? It's not a dangling modifiers problem because continuing support, continuing is the modifier here. It's describing support. And actually, right, continuing support, this is adjective noun here. So we don't have a dangling modifier problem. And now what Taeyun said is there's no reason to use passive voice, right? And passive voice itself isn't the problem, but you're getting closer, which is what? Okay? Take a look at E and D. Continuing support is what they deserve. Continuing support is deserved, right? So here, basic research deserves continuing support versus is deserved, right? No, it's not necessary to use the passive there, right? And here, continuing support is what they deserve. That's even worse, right? All of this is unnecessary. We're saying the same thing with C here, right? And remember, in the new SAT, what you're taking, right? In the new ACT, you're looking for the best answer choice. And best is defined by 1, your answer must be grammatically correct. And 2, if multiple answer choices are grammatically correct, you need to be able to determine which one is the best. Because remember, some of them you have repetition, right? You have redundancy as well too. So you also have to look at the style as well too. So C is the best choice. Got it good? All right, let's move on. Okay. The charges against the organization are being investigated by a committee. It includes several senators, okay? Now let's do this, okay? Remember I told you, I talked about a very useful tool when we're looking at comma splices, when we're looking at run-ons, when we're looking at fragments, right? And get rid of all the modifiers, which includes prepositional phrases, are being investigated by a committee. So let's get rid of committee, 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 right? Because by a committee, that's a prepositional phrase, chunjisanhu, right? Against the organization, prepositional phrase, chunjisanhu. So the charges are being investigated, so we only have the essentials left, right? And the independent clause here is the charges are being investigated, all right? And now it becomes much easier to look for the correct answer. We have a comma here, we have a semicolon here, we have a comma, and nothing in between here, right? And now, let's start with a semicolon because semicolons are the easiest ones to rule out. If there's a semicolon on both sides of the semicolon, what must we have?
Subject verb, subject verb.
Complete sentences on both sides, right? And it can be DC, comma, IC, semicolon, IC, comma, DC or something like that. The important part is that on both sides you must have, pretend it's two different problems, okay? And on each side you want to make sure that there's a complete sentence, okay? Doesn't matter if it's DC, comma, IC, doesn't matter if it's just IC, but if it's just the DC on one side, that's a fragment, right? So let's take a look here. It, including several senators. We know we have an IC on the left side, but right side we do not have a verb. We have a subject, it, but we don't have a verb that goes with that, right? So this is a fragment, no verb. So we can get rid of B. And we said that for commas now, we need to make sure that we're connecting it properly. If there's an IC after the comma, what must we have in between?
Fanboys.
Comma fanboys, right? And here we have it includes subject verb independent clause, so this is a comma splice for C, comma. And it will include, looks good to me, but we'll put a question mark, comma, they include, again, same problem as comma splice here because we have two independent clauses connected with just the comma. Committee, that includes. Is this an independent clause here? No, it's now a modifier. So we're left with just C and E, okay? And let's take a look at which is the better choice. But first, the big difference is that not only is it a modifier, we also have this pronoun, it, right? And if we have a third person pronoun and it here, is it being used just for an expression? Because remember, it can be used as, it is hot outside. Is that a representative it or is it an expressive it? Can we replace it with a noun there? It is hot outside. It is snowing outside. Does that represent a noun? No. 표현적인 의시 있고 대표적인 의시 있지. If it's a representative it, and here it's suddenly something that will include, we need to find the antecedent. Charges against the organization, committee, right? We have two things, organization, singular, noun. Committee, singular, noun. Is it clear which one will include several senators? No. It can be the committee that includes several senators. It can be the organization that includes several senators if we use the the pronoun it, right? So we call this an ambiguous pronoun, right? Pronoun ambiguity or pronoun antecedent. So we get rid of C. That leaves just E, and sure enough, now it's clear that it's the committee that includes several senators. Good? All right. Lastly, and very quickly, these are no error problems, and students used to hate these on the old SAT, right? Why? You guys are fortunate because I'm never giving you ones where E is the right answer. Okay, this is just a hint. If any of you, if on one of your exams you choose no error, I'm gonna be like, you weren't paying attention, all right? I'm never gonna give you a problem where it's no error. Okay, so do not choose this one, all right? Now, norepinephrine first became known in the late 1960s. In the late 1960s, I'm looking at the word became. I don't have to worry about subject-verb agreement because became is became no matter whether it's singular or plural, right? Became, 단수 복수, 상관없어, became, right? And tense, in the late 1960s, past tense looks good to me, okay? As a magazine journalist who has wrote feature articles about cultural institutions and media personalities, right? And this as, is there anything wrong with it idiomatically or grammatically, right? As a magazine journalist, is it wrong to become known as something? No, it's absolutely okay, right? Jaimin became known as a short teacher, right? Nothing wrong with that, right? Nothing wrong. If anyone argues, you're dead, okay? Nothing wrong, all right? A magazine journalist who has wrote. Now, we have a few things here. Who has, right? Now, is the tense wrong? Well, no. Since then, this person could have, and even now be, right? Even up until now. Since then until now, right? But the big problem here is what many students have trouble with. What's the past tense of write? Write, writes, and just past tense, Dongjun. Wrote, and now you're getting at it, which is past participle is written. This is an irregular past participle. So C is, it should be written, okay? And articles about institutions, the idiom is okay here, so the error is in C. It should be has written. Are we good?
Good.
All right, so now it's your turn, right? So thank you. You can turn that off now.